What's up, you guys? Welcome to Walk the Line. I hope you guys are having a wonderful end to your 2024 year. We're a couple days away from New Year's Eve. I'm hoping you guys have some huge plans lined up for the night. Make sure you're safe out there. And I've been missing hopping on the mic and dissecting a UFC fight card with you guys. But a couple more weeks. We are in the middle of the off season. This is our off season, right? If the UFC skips 1 week of action, we're out here going stir crazy, scratching our heads. We are in the middle of a 4-week break and period from some fight action taking place. It's okay. It's given us some time to reset. And we're lucky when you think about it, because all other major sports have a much longer extended period of time for their off seasons. So when you're thinking the NFL, MLB, NBA, okay, they're gone for months. We don't really have to deal with that. Now, before we turn the page in 2024, just want to take a second to admire it. It was another very profitable year. There was a lot of growth going on here with the channel. Although I will say this, what we did in 2024 will not even come close to what we're about to do this upcoming year. Cannot wait to show you everything that's going to start to unravel. You guys know I've been preaching about that for some time, but you guys will see it. But we did accomplish a lot this year. I hope you guys accomplished a lot as well. I hope you guys were very profitable throughout the year with your betting. I'll have a video coming out in a day or two also with some tips and things you could use to benefit yourself betting on MMA, okay, week to week, things that could help you profit when it's all said and done. When 2025 is done, you want to make sure you're in the green. I'm going to give you guys a couple of tips and tricks that I use to help me do that, things I've learned throughout the years. Now, the real reason why we're here today is I want to give out some awards, okay? I want to give out my awards for the 2024 year, my knockout of the year, my submission of the year, my fighter of the year. That's one I cannot wait to get to, and I want to get some feedback from you guys. I think we're going to have about half of you guys agreeing with me, maybe about half of you guys disagreeing with me. So hit that comment section up. Let me know who your fighter of the year is. I think some of you guys may know which way I'm going to go there. What else am I missing? Fight of the year, submission of the year, knockout of the year, all that type of stuff. And I need some feedback, guys. I really love your guys' feedback because I want to know if you guys are agreeing with me on this stuff or you're disagreeing with me. And we'll jump right into that here in a second. If you guys can, please like this video. If anyone is looking to sign up to a new sports book, reach out to me. I will give you my referral link for BetUS. You will get a 150% match on your first 3 deposits. Okay, kicking off the next year, we got a lot of big action up on the horizon. Hopefully, you guys are going to have some big targets as well. Get that sports book cooking, and let's rack it up, man. Let's triple up, let's quadruple up our accounts, and have a great start to the year. All right, guys, let's jump into today's episode.
The teller.
All right, guys, so right off the rip, I'm jumping straight to my biggest award that I'm giving out. Okay, Male Fighter of the Year. And in my opinion, there's really only 4 guys you could be talking about in this conversation. If you want to push it, you could reach to 5, and I'll kind of explain why that 5th fighter he's really not in the mix for me. Okay, some of you guys are going to feel it really comes down to 2 fighters. All right, for me, the 2024 Male Fighter of the Year is Ilia Topuria. Okay, and I know a lot of you guys probably saw that coming. I'm a huge Ilia Topuria fan. Okay, now he only had 2 victories in the year, but when you think about the significance of those 2 fights, okay, becoming the featherweight champion of the world, knocking out Alexander Volkanovski, was an underdog in that fight. Okay, it was a huge win. Alexander Volkanovski, one of the greatest fighters of all time, so you put a lot of merit into that victory there. Now, the one that actually carried more weight for me was when he went out there and knocked out Max Holloway, a fighter that's never been knocked out before. He's proven to be so durable. To go out there and follow up that Volkanovski performance with that's just crazy. Taking out 2 legends of the game. I mean, real legends. We're not just throwing around that term recklessly. Legends of the game. 2 of the greatest fighters to have ever done it in the division. I mean, literally on the Mount Rushmore is Volkanovski and Holloway. Ilia Topuria is my fighter of the year. You guys meet me in the comment section because I know a lot of you will feel that it's Alex Pereira. Now, Alex Pereira had 3 victories in the year. Yeah, took fights on short notice, had some spectacular finishes. When you think about the Jamal Hill KO, how crazy was that? That was one of my favorite knockouts of all time. The way Herb tried to pause the action there, Pereira waved him off and then followed up with the knockout over Hill and, was waving his hands at him, did that whole motion thing. I mean, it was an epic moment in the octagon. But when you take into consideration, one of his victories was a rematch over Yuri Prochazka. He already proved to be the better fighter. Prochazka is a great fighter, but He's very defensively flawed, and he went out there and did what a lot of us expected him to do in that fight. And then his most recent victory over Khalil Roundtree, a lot of people were in agreement with me, feeling that Roundtree didn't even deserve that title opportunity. He was ranked way down in the division. He recently had a questionable decision victory over Dustin Jacoby. A lot of people thought that he lost that fight. Other than that, he was coming in off victories over fighters like Anthony Smith and Chris Daukaus, Carl Robertson. Was he really deserving of that fight? And that was a fight that played out pretty competitively. A lot of people have that in their top 10 as far as most exciting fights of the year. Roundtree landed his own damage. It wasn't like Pereira went out there and dominated the fight. So when you take that all into consideration, and let me also note, Roundtree, his most recent loss before the Pereira loss was against Marcin Prachnio. So I just don't put too much merit into victories over fighters like that compared to the fighters that Ilia Topuria has been going out there and taking out this year. And when you think about Ilia Topuria, this is a fighter that will have his chance. I know it's a little premature, but he will have his chance to be the greatest fighter the featherweight division has ever seen. He'll try to make a run at being one of the GOATs of the sport. He has the potential to be the greatest of all time. I mean, again, it's a premature statement, but if he continues to do what he's doing right now for the next 2 to 3 years, I mean, this is where it all really kicked off. He's still undefeated. He's 16-0. If he continues to do what he's doing right now, this is where it all started in the 2024 year. It's where it really started to blossom. And I know he's been going out there and taking dudes' heads off for the last couple of years, but with the step up in competition, you gotta really give it its flowers. Other than that, you got DDP in the mix, Dricus du Plessis. He was 2-0 throughout the year. Had a decision victory over Sean Strickland where he became the champion. That was one of the greatest fights we've ever seen in the division. Great fight. Controversial, though. That's kind of where he loses a little stock for me. A lot of people thought Strickland took that fight. And then after that, he had a phenomenal performance submitting Israel Adesanya. That submission, well, maybe we'll be talking about that in a little bit for submission of the year. Stay tuned. We'll see. But Dricus had a great year. And then Merab Dvalishvili also had an excellent year, becoming the champion. And also, besides just becoming the champion, taking out Sean O'Malley, the way he ragdolled Henry Cejudo was very impressive. But other than that, you're looking at fighters like Diego Lopez, Renato Moicano, Carlos Pratis, Bilal Muhammad, Joaquin Buckley. But when you really take into consideration what they did throughout the year, it's not comparable to the fighters at the top. And I won't go too much further into that, but Ilia Topuria is my male fighter of the year. Now, my 2024 female fighter of the year is going to be Kayla Harrison. Okay, the way she made her UFC debut, it was phenomenal. The way that she went out there and just dominated Holly Holm, followed that up with another impressive victory over Ketlin Vieira. She's now setting herself up for a title opportunity. She's came in, she's made weight. Okay, we all knew that she used to fight at a higher weight class and showed dominance over in the PFL for years. And you got to give her flowers as well for coming into the UFC and looking better than ever. Even though she's not really the youngest fighter, right? She is 34 years old and she still looks to have a lot of prime action ahead of her. I think that she'll be a fighter that will have that gold strap around her waist in the near future. And she is my female fighter of the year. All right, here we go. We're talking knockout of the year. There were a lot of phenomenal KOs that took place throughout 2024. Now, when I'm giving you my knockout of the year here, it's a mixture of the knockout itself, but then also the merit of the KO. Okay, the weight that came in behind the knockout, the importance of the knockout, and as you guys may expect, a little, I wouldn't say biasness. Okay, I wouldn't say that. I think that this is the right selection for me. The KO of the year was Ilia Topuria over Max Holloway. When you take into consideration that Max Holloway has never been KO'd, he seemed so indestructible as far as taking him out in that route. And for Ilia Topuria to continue to do what he's been doing, that was the KO of the year for me. I had that at number one. Besides that, the knockout that Alex Pereira had over Jamal Hill was very close just for the way that he did it. It was so impressive. It was so entertaining. I mean, that KO was just crazy, pushing the ref to the side and then following that up with the KO immediately after. Just kind of loving the fact that Jamal Hill was all worked up about it. You know, Jamal Hill has actually posted some reels, actually poking fun at the teller. Funny enough, right? He's poked some fun at some of my predictions and selections on his fights where he's proved me wrong. Okay, but again, it all in good fun. But it's not that I'm not a Jamal Hill fan, but I kind of like to go against him a little bit. Which maybe sneak peek, we'll be taking Prohaska over him. But as you guys know, we will make that selection in a more professional manner. We'll dive into the tape and we'll actually pick that fight in a more professional manner. But I do like to root against Jamal Hill. That knockout was right there for me. Other notable knockouts, of course, the Max Holloway KO over Justin Gaethje. I probably have that at number 2 or 3. You could really argue either one for them there. The way that Holloway got that knockout with just seconds to go. And that fight was very entertaining, even leading up to that last second KO. I have that right there. Right after that, I got Shera Magomedov over Arman Petrosyan. That double spinning back fist KO, phenomenal. That's right there, right around the number 4 spot for me. And then if you want to talk about a couple other knockouts that we saw this year, where they were, if you will, lower level fighters that are still proving themselves. They weren't on a huge showcase. I thought that the knockout that Esteban Ribovics had over Terrence McKinney was brutal. That was a crazy one. The flying knee that Vinicius Oliveira landed on Sopai was phenomenal as well. That was a very exciting fight, but it was early on a fight card. It didn't get as much attention maybe as it should have, or not as many eyes were able to see it live as some of these other knockouts that we're talking about, but that was a crazy one as well. And Vinicius Oliveira is another fighter that's bursting on the scene, starting to prove himself. And then the last one I'll just mention, honorable mention for the knockout that DP had over the Frenchman and BSD. Okay, that was crazy, weathering the storm throughout that fight. And then 2 other honorable mentions, of course, the Topuria KO over Volkanovski, where he became the champion. And then I got to give credit to DP. The Dustin Poirier finish that he had over BSD, that was phenomenal too. Just weathering the storm throughout that fight, waiting for his opportunity to land his big strikes and finishing up BSD the way that he did. That was phenomenal. So those were some of my favorites. But the number 1 knockout of the year was Ilia Topuria over Max Holloway. Tell me why you disagree, if you disagree, and I want some feedback. I want to meet you in the comment section, and I want to know what your favorite KO of the year was. For submission of the year, I'm going to give the award to Dricus du Plessis with the sub over Israel Adesanya. So much on the line. That fight was very close. Going into the round that he had the submission victory in, was hitting into that next gear. You know how DDP does it. He kind of looks like he's getting winded, but just never seems to gas out. Just continues to push through. Kind of broke Izzy down a little bit there. I love the way he worked that body lock, ripped him down to the mat, and then eventually sinking in that rear naked choke with everything on the line. That was the submission of the year for me. And if you guys joined me for my live for that event, you guys know I was going crazy. That was UFC 305. I did a live show for that, and I was going crazy. There was things broke over here in the lab. I was jumping up, going crazy. I had a ridiculous amount of money on that play. I gave that out as a free official play here in the channel. Gave that one out for free. DDP too. It wasn't like he was a massive favorite. He was an underdog going into the fight. He was a slight dog, and he showed up. And that one for me takes the cake. Honorable mentions for Khamzat Chimaev with his sub over Robert Whittaker. That was crazy to go in there and do that. And I'll be the first to admit I've had my question marks about Whittaker with some of his past performances and just the way he's been inactive. And I think that submission victory really put a stamp on the fact that he is back and he is a force to be reckoned with. That was huge. Islam Makhachev's submission over DP. And then just 2 others that I want to mention. Okay, honorable mentions for the submission that Gerald Meerschaert had over Edmund Shabazian. He was losing that fight, never looked for a way out. The all-time submission leader, right, in the UFC's middleweight division, an underrated fighter. He has his flaws in his game for sure, but you have to love the will that he has when he's in there. And I thought that was a phenomenal performance by him to come back and submit Edmund Shabazian. And then Kayla Harrison's rear naked choke victory over Holly Holm in her UFC debut, showcasing the dominance that she did in that fight. That has to be towards the top of your list too. Comment below, guys. Let me know what was your sub of the year. I want to hear it. For my UFC newcomer of the year, now this one should be pretty unanimous. I would find it hard to believe that any of you guys disagree with this. I've seen a lot of people in agreement online. I have Carlos Pratis as the UFC newcomer of the year. I mean, the work that he's been doing, it's been phenomenal. He's going out there. He's finishing these fighters in phenomenal fashion. He brings in these different intangibles and traits. He's so long for the division. He's a nasty striker. He's not easy to be taken down. He is the fighter that did it for me this year. And he's a fighter that I think that is going to do some huge things in the near future. This is a fighter that could be fighting for the belt one day. He is the UFC newcomer of the year for me. Other than that, honorable mention for Kayla Harrison, who came over from the PFL and has looked pretty good. She's 2-0 now. Got to give credit to Gene Silva too. Gene Silva has been an absolute dog. He's been going out there knocking dudes out and fighting out of the fighting nerds. They've produced so much new talent to the octagon. You could also even mention Mauricio Rufy, who's been looking great. But Gene Silva, I have him kind of a step above for some of the work that he's done. And I like what Rufy's doing as well. He's phenomenal. But that last fight was a little bit more competitive than I expected it to be. And let's just also mention Felipe Lima, who I just saw fight live and had some huge action intertwined with him in a parlay. And he's looked great. I mean, you think about his UFC debut that he had coming in on short notice. People were worried that he may have been undersized, and he's another one you got to keep an eye on. But at the end of the day, it's all about Carlos Prates. And then the last award that I'm going to give out is for Fight of the Year. Maybe I'm a little bit biased with my pick here, but just knowing what I had on the line, it was a huge event for me at UFC 306. One of my plays that we cashed in on, which we cashed in on a lot of them, was actually, if you guys can imagine this, if you guys forgot or if you didn't remember this, if you don't follow me on IG at MMA Fortune Teller _ maybe you missed it because I was talking about it a lot that night. I actually had a play on Daniel Zellweger and Esteban Ribovics for that fight to go to a decision. And that fight was very close to being stopped in the third round. Esteban Ribovics almost had the finish. Listen, Zellweger landed a lot of damage throughout that fight too. You could almost argue he could have found his finish, but really Ribovics was looking to get him out of there. That fight was crazy. I was on the edge of my seat. I was going crazy. I thought that we were going to see a finish. We never did. I was happy we didn't. And maybe the finish would have made that fight even that much more exciting. I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe it was better. And it made it to the final bell. The heart that Zellweger showed in that fight was crazy. They went to war. Two of the younger, more talented fighters that are starting to make a name for themselves in the game. They're two fighters that really have potential to make a run in their division. That was my fight of the year. Besides that, maybe you guys will feel this is a more biased pick, but the fight between Mateus Rebecki and Orolbe was a big one for me too. That was one of the bigger underdog plays that I cashed in on throughout this year. Okay, we had a big dog play on Rebecki. Excuse me, I call him Rebecki. He spells it Rebecki, but it's pronounced Rebecki. I know some of you guys will be attacking me in the comment section, but I did not understand why Mateus Rebecki was as much of an underdog going into that fight as he was. I know there's a lot of respect on Orolbe, but Rebecki was a fighter that not too long ago was highly respected. Okay, he was in a fight before that where he was pretty much dominating. He made some mistakes and errors, and he did take an L for the first time in the UFC, but that line should have never been there. But the main focal point that we're talking about here is that fight was a very exciting one. There was a lot of blood in the cage. I was on the edge of my seat. That, for me, was one of the better fights that we saw throughout the year. Justin Gaethje versus Max Holloway. That's towards the top of my list, but in reality, I see a lot of people with that fight towards the top of their list, but in reality, I don't think that fight was as close, right, as maybe some of these other fights were. If that fight would have made it to the judges' scorecards, I mean, it was clearly Max Holloway that was going to get his hand raised, and even though he got that finish at the last second, that made it crazy, but that fight wasn't as competitive as I wanted it to be. I had money on Gaethje, so I was a little disappointed in that fight overall. And what other fights can we mention? I mean, I guess we should mention the Alex Pereira versus Khalil Roundtree fight. That was a crazy one as well. Dricus du Plessis versus Adesanya was another great fight. And then the last two that I want to name here that are in my top 5, top 10 that really stood out to me here in my notes was the Yuri Prohaska versus Alexander Rakic fight. The way that Prohaska took all that damage, kept pushing forward, and eventually found his finish there, got the knockout there at UFC 300. That was one of the fights of the night on a big event, right? UFC 300. That was a big one for me. And we'll talk once again about the DP versus BSD fight. That was a crazy fight. And that fight was towards the top of my list as well. Give me your guys' fight of the year. All right, guys, that's going to wrap up the award show for 2024. This is something I definitely will be doing year to year. Nothing too long, nothing too crazy, but we hit up the main talking points when you're talking about MMA awards. I'm not going to go into who was my European fighter of the year, my South American fighter of the year. I'm not going to go crazy with that. We're talking KO, sub, fight of the year for the male side, the female side. Keep it simple. I would love for you guys to hit that comment section up, like I said, and I would love to see your guys' lists for every one of those categories. And just give me one. Keep it simple. Give me your winner for each one of these categories below. I would love to check those out, guys. And please like this video, subscribe to the channel if you're new. I'm going to have some good content coming your guys' way, even though we don't have any UFC action taking place this weekend or the next weekend. We have to wait till January 11th. I have some other content that I want to push out, stuff that I think you guys will find helpful. I'm going to do a video with about 3 to 4 tips for things that you guys can use for the upcoming year to make sure that you're in the green, that you guys are profitable. Tips and tricks that I've learned throughout over a decade of betting on MMA, well over a decade at this point in time. You guys see the grays coming in. So we'll have that out to you guys. And we will have the first card of the year that's headlined by Mackenzie Dern and Amanda Ribas. We will have that card dissected and broke down very soon, and we'll have that uploaded early next week. All right, guys, leave you with that. Signing out. Teller.
The teller.